Hey, what's up everybody? Jake here and welcome to the hobby. When you start collecting Pokemon cards, you probably want your cards to increase in value over the next 5, 10, 20 years. You're keeping your cards safe, you're putting them in binders, you're grading them, you're making sure that they are going to stay pristine for the future, and you are hoping for some really nice collectibles in the future. However, the truth is that most Pokemon cards never increase in value. When people talk about Pokemon cards rising in value and how expensive some cards are, those are very, very specific cards. The vast majority of Pokemon cards never increase in value. So in today's video, we're going to talk about that. Why the vast majority of cards stay cheap forever. Most cards do not ever climb in terms of value, and a very select few do. So we're going to talk about why some of those cards actually climb. Let me give you guys some examples of cards that simply did not climb in terms of value. First off, we have ourselves the Gold Ultra Necrozma card. This card is a big chase card from Dragon Majesty. This set is over 5 years old and it's a really, really nice set. Booster packs of Dragon Majesties are very expensive nowadays. However, one of the big chase cards, this Gold Ultra Necrozma, did not climb in value at all. Since the release of the set, it was going for $75, and after 5 years, it is still going for $75. It has not climbed at all. Okay, well that's Gold Ultra Necrozma. That's not a super rare or cool Pokemon. Let's go with a more interesting Pokemon. Let's go with Reshiram and Charizard Tag Team GX Rainbow Rare. That's a really cool card. It's got Reshiram and Charizard on it. It's the Rainbow Rare Hyper Rare Chase Secret version of this card, and it's from Unbroken Bonds, one of the best Pokemon card set from the Sun and Moon lineup. Well, this set is 4 years old. At release, you could pick up this Rainbow Rare Charizard for $125, and now, after 4 years, after the pandemic, after the biggest amount of Pokemon hype ever, this card you can still find going for near mint condition for $125. It has not climbed at all. Okay, let's go with one final example of a card that did not climb in terms of value. Everyone knows that full art trainer cards have exploded in popularity over the past couple of years. So what about this one, the Pokemon Breeder card? This card is from the Shining Legends set, which is 6 years old, and Shining Legends is a very expensive booster pack to pick up after just 6 years. But the Pokemon Breeder full art was going for $7 6 years ago, and it's still going for $7 today. It has not climbed at all in terms of value. But you're probably thinking, well, it's not a name trainer. It's not a name trainer. Of course, it's not going to go up in value. Well, that's not true because other unnamed trainers have climbed quite a bit in value. We have the Sightseer, which is one of the most expensive full art trainer ever, and it's not a named trainer full art. So there's tons of really inconsistent stuff going on in the hobby. So we're going to talk about why some Pokemon cards never go up in value, and it really comes back down to supply and demand, but it really goes to collectors overestimating the value of demand or overestimating the value of supply. So I'm going to give you guys some examples of that happening in the hobby, and these are real examples happening right now in the hobby, so you guys can see for yourself how your decisions can impact your collection long term. So let me give you guys an example of overestimating the value of demand. What that means is where you think the demand will carry a card. A card is so popular, a Pokemon is so popular, it's going to go up in value no matter what. So what's an example of that? We have ourselves the Illustration Charizard. A couple of years ago, inside of one of my videos for the community investment portfolio, I allowed viewers to pick and vote on what Pokemon cards we should collect. And after a viewer vote with a bunch of other really great options, including a card like Special Delivery Pikachu, and it ends up that the Illustration Charizard won out. The Illustration Charizard was a card that came out as a promo card in Japan, and it looks really nice. A great talented artist was able to really capture Charizard inside of a battle scene, and this card was immortalized into this trading card. And of course, that card is now readily available on the secondary market. We picked up a couple of copies of this card, I think for around $20 to $25, and right now you can pick up the Illustration Charizard for a whopping $5. It's gone down a ton in value. So I'm bringing this up as an example because the community voted for this card. People believed in the vote that this card was the best collectible for the community investment portfolio long term. Why did they believe that? Because it's the illustration Charizard. It has to go up in value. It's Charizard in an illustration card. Why would it not go up in value? Why didn't it go up in value? The reason it didn't go up in value was because this card was printed into the ground. People just didn't think about the supply side of it at all. People just thought it's the illustration Charizard, it has to go up in value, and that's simply not the case. Just because a card is cool, just because a card has a cool Pokemon, doesn't mean it has to go up in value. There were just tons and tons of copies of this card. I know shops out there that were selling buckets of 1,000 copies of this illustration Charizard at a given time. That was how many copies they had just readily available of this card. And this card, I do believe, will stay at $5 till the end of time. Perhaps even with inflation, it would be a bad collectible long term. You can still have a copy of it because it's worth the same as a cup of coffee, so it's still a really cool card, but it will never go up in value simply because of the supply side of it. People voted for it in the community investment portfolio because they believed in the demand. They overestimated the value of the demand. Well, that's all fine and dandy. Well, let's talk about overestimating supply. And that doesn't mean what you think it means, which probably means there's too much of something. Usually, overestimating the value of supply means you think something is rare and therefore it should be expensive. So let me give you another real life example of where something is rare but is simply not worth that much. So we're going to give you a PSA 9 to PSA 9 example. We have ourselves the PSA 9 Great Felt Hat Pikachu. Very recent card, you all know about it. This card in a PSA 9 is currently going for $150, which is pretty darn expensive considering that there are 6,000 PSA 9 copies of this card. 6,000 PSA 9 copies, and that's not even talking about the PSA 10 copies because there's actually over 7,000 PSA 10 copies of this card. So that's how readily available it is right now. There's just a ton of copies of this Great Felt Hat Pikachu card, but it's still commanding a very strong price, I think of $150 for a PSA 9 and between $300 to $400 for a PSA 10. So a very expensive card. Well, that's the PSA 9 version of the Great Felt Hat Pikachu. So how does that compare to another card that is significantly more rare? We're going to talk about the XY Full Art Blastoise EX because this card came out 10 years ago and it is one of the big chase card, if not the biggest chase card from the XY base set. So this is a very cool card and it is the chase card for XY base, which is a very expensive set nowadays. You can probably spend thousands of dollars on an XY base set booster box, but that's a different tangent. We're going to talk about the PSA 9 version of the Blastoise EX Full Art card. And this card, in a PSA 9, there are less than 300 copies of it. Remember, the Great Felt Hat Pikachu in a PSA 9, there's over 6,000 copies of. The Blastoise, there are less than 300 copies. So significantly more rare. Significantly more rare. 10, 20 times more rare than the Great Felt Hat Pikachu, also in a PSA 9. So how much is this card going for? Well, you can probably pick it up for under $100 right now in a PSA 9. That's how expensive this card is going for. Going for $100. So there is an example of a card that simply is a lot more rare, but is not expensive. So this is an example of people overestimating the value of supply. Just because something is rare doesn't mean it's expensive. You really have to have a strong medium middle ground between both supply and demand. You have to find a really great sweet spot where a card is just rare enough and just in demand enough for it to actually go up in value. So this is a very specific category. And you can probably find tons of examples of cards that have gone up in value. I'm not saying cards never go up in value. In fact, a lot of cards go up in value, but the vast majority of Pokemon cards, I would say 99% of the cards inside of your collection, the commons, uncommons, ultra rare Vs, the rainbow rare item cards, the gold rare item cards, I would say 99% of most set cards are not going to go up in value. They're going to stay cheap for the vast majority of their future. A very select group of collectible cards that people truly want to hold on long term, truly are searching out there and are highly sought after, while at the same time being just rare enough to actually be hard to find, are actually going to go up in value. So this is a very sweet spot. And there are lots of examples of cards that have climbed about 500, 800%, 1,000% over the past 5 years. And you probably know what those cards are. And those cards specifically fit that sweet spot. So that's what I wanted this video to be about, why the vast majority of cards are going to stay cheap for the longest time because of the lack of demand and the lack of the value of their supply. So that's what I wanted to carry on with this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys enjoyed today's video and today's topic, let me know down in the comment section what your thoughts are, because whenever I do a video like this, it is a little bit of a conversation piece. Of course, you can agree and disagree with my points, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.